Hello, everyone. This is Coach Tim Campsall, and I'm excited to have a fellow business owner with us today. Something unique about my guest is he's a filmmaker who turned into a business owner. We're going to get him to share that story with us here in a minute. When I asked him what he likes to do in his downtime, he laughed and asked what downtime, but I gather from the other things he shared with me, it is spending time with his family because that is who he is most proud of is his wife and three kids. It's my pleasure to welcome Kevin to the show today. Hey, Kevin.
Hey Tim, thanks a lot for having me.
Well, hey, let's start with having you introduce yourself. Tell us your full name and a little bit of your personal background, like where you were born and live, about your family and hobbies.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tim, and thanks for having me again. So my name is Kevin Chenault, and I'm the founder of Key Advertising, a digital ad agency here in Evansville, Indiana. Born and raised here in Southern Indiana, and welcome to the state. I know that
Thank you.
you're a transplant, so we appreciate that. We love to see population growth in Indiana. But I was born and raised here in Southern Indiana. Got really interested in video and filmmaking through skateboarding. Skateboarding was, kind of my life whenever I was 12, 13 years old, as so many kind of fall in love with skateboarding or some sort of outside sports activity. And that turned me into a kind of a videographer. And I started to really, tend to kind of get more excited about the video and the cameras and things like that rather than the skateboarding side of it. And so I started writing scripts and started getting into short film production and making independent films as well. And then that turned into a love for business.
Mm, very cool. So tell us about your family. I know that you're married and three kids. What's the age range? What's your wife's name? All that fun stuff.
Oh yeah, my wife is Emily, and we have three kiddos, and the oldest is 12. So right there on the preteen on the
Uh-huh.
preteen age, he's a seventh grader, and then we have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So we're still in like the potty training phase
Uh-huh.
too. So we run the full spectrum there.
And I know that that's a full-time job on top of your full-time running the
Mm.
business, but what do you like to do when you've got 5 minutes of free time?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that, just spending any time with the kiddos around the house, I'm often taking little breaks from my computer, taking breaks from business to go run outside and just play with the kids in the backyard. Just a 5 minute, 10 minute
Yeah.
little breather. I joked about, what free time because business owners rarely have it, right? And I joked about that, but I've recently come across something that was just really wise, and it was a recommendation of just spending 15 minutes with your kids a day. Just changes everything for them. It's such a big deal. So I often do that, and just play outside with the kiddos in the backyard is a common activity around the house.
Fantastic. Is there a funny story that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share today?
Oh man, I'm sure a lot. I often get ridiculed and get ripped for a little bit of hair loss that's going on. You and I both,
Yeah, I wish I
so
had as much as you do.
I do, and I'll be where you are, I'm sure, in a few months. Be like, hey, I wish I had. So yeah, Tim, I think man, we can get my 12-year-old on the line real quick, and he'll have plenty of funny stories and things to rip me for. But yeah, that's what it's so great to have. We have three boys. I don't know if I said that or not, but it's just so funny. They're getting to that age to where making fun of their dad is like,
Ah,
it's like a favorite pastime of theirs. So
I
I,
can
I
only
get made fun of a lot. So
imagine.
you have to have thick skin. You gotta be able to roll with the punches whenever you're raising three boys, apparently.
Well, the good news is so far you can probably still beat them wrestling. So, they
So
can't pick
far.
on you too much.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So far, although my 12-year-old is like almost my height, so I've only got a few more months of that, I'm
Right.
sure.
So Kevin, tell us, you gave a little bit of the background on in terms of film, but how did the business come about and at what point did you have the confidence you could run your own business?
Oh wow. I think back on this every so often because I really think that filmmaking is a business
Mm.
onto itself. And it's something that most artists, most filmmakers don't think about is the business side of making a film. I mean, it really is kind of it's a business that has a beginning, middle, and end to it. You crew up for a production. You're hiring people based on their talents and sometimes their personalities. More so, you should hire based on personalities, as I've come to learn being a business owner, that attitude is a big, big part of why
Sure
you should hire. And we could talk more about that, I'm sure. But it really is something that most filmmakers don't think about is that you are starting a business
is.
to make a film. And so I didn't know that I loved business. I thought that I was a filmmaker, and that's where my passion lied, and with kind of visuals and moving images and things like that. I had no idea that I loved business, but it turned out once I started making music videos and video productions for commercials and for corporations and businesses, I realized, oh my gosh, I actually love the business side of it. I had no idea that I would love spreadsheets and I would love the business development side of running a business, but it is actually what I enjoy the most nowadays. Now I still make films, and I have a few film projects that are currently in various stages of production, but I'm tackling that with a kind of a much more different approach than what I would have years ago. I really am tackling it as a business now.
I love what you just said because I think it's not the norm is a creative that loves spreadsheets.
No, right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's a weird, and you don't think about it, except whenever you're making a film, that's the vast majority of pre-production, besides writing and actually capturing the ideas and putting them to paper. A lot of pre-production is the business side of it. It is prepping spreadsheets and schedules and things like that. And it's rare, it is rare to find somebody who likes kind of both ends of the spectrum like that. But, something that I've been consuming a lot more content around is are the business channels on YouTube that talk about filmmaking. And
Mm,
it's really super interesting because there's so much crossover between business and filmmaking.
yeah. So tell us more about the company. What's the name? What do you guys do? How do you help people?
Hmm. We are Key Advertising, spelled KEI, and we're a digital advertising agency. And our approach is a little bit different. We look at ourselves as a holistic advertising agency because whenever we start working with a client, we're not just working with them on their digital ad strategies or social or web or whatever that might be, but we're taking a look at them holistically, and we're trying to make sure that our strategy is going to yield the results that they're looking for. But interestingly enough, whenever I started the agency, back in 2015, we primarily focused on video production. That's my background.
Yeah,
That was kind of a natural evolution for what I was doing. I was making music videos and short films and features, and it turned out that creating a video production company was a next logical step for me.
sure.
Of course, it was my wife's idea. She comes up with all the good ones. And whenever she initially told me, "Hey, you should start your own video production company and make commercials for clients," I thought, "Oh my gosh, that's the last thing I wanted to do." I thought I had that separation, that
Uh,
creative quote unquote separation of art and commerce, and I didn't think
ah,
that I didn't think that those two things meshed very well.
okay.
A few weeks later, I realized that she was completely right and that a video production company would be amazing to run. And we quickly grew from just video to social and digital and web and brand. Within a 6 month period of time, we went from video only to offering all those other
Oh,
services
wow.
as well.
Yeah, very cool. So, you mentioned a couple of times just little things that have come up along the way. To that point, we know that successful businesses can get stuck at various stages of their growth or have hurdles that they need to overcome. So tell us about one of your biggest challenges and maybe
Hmm.
somebody that came alongside you helped you through it.
Yeah, Tim, that's so there's so many challenges, right? Whenever you're growing to that $1 million sales revenue marker or even the 1 to 5. I just recently heard Kevin O'Leary talking about this and he said to build a business to $1 million is almost impossible. It's so hard. And to go from 1 million to 5 million is just as hard. To go from 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 and so on, it actually becomes easier. His thought process was that you have a lot more capital to
Mm,
throw at problems at that time.
yeah.
Whenever you're growing to 1 million, you're lacking in money, you're lacking in capital to be able to throw at your problems to try and solve them. So I think one of the problems, one of the many challenges that we've overcome or that I've overcome with the help of others and guidance, is delegation.
Mm,
That's something that whenever I was making films, for the past, 20 plus years, or even early on, whenever I started, our original name was Blackstrap Media, and then we've just recently rebranded to Key Advertising. But even in the very early stages, that was one of the biggest challenges that I had was to delegate
mm.
properly and to truly delegate, to set the person up for success, to make sure that they had the information that they needed,
Yeah.
and then you delegated afterwards, right? There's so many situations where we tend to delegate, but we're not setting the person up for success.
Yes.
They don't have all the details, the information that they need in order to achieve what you're asking them to achieve. And then there's the other side of that coin where we micromanage,
Mm,
right? Where we do too much hand holding,
yeah.
and we're not setting them up for success to delegate and for you to delegate
Yeah.
that request off to them. That's been a really big challenge of mine. And I think that I've had a lot of great people around me that have helped guide that, point that out,
Mm.
right? I mean, from team members, fellow leadership team members here at the agency to help remind me. And still to this day, my gut instinct is let me jump in there and help.
Yeah.
Let me jump in there and help this out.
Yes. Yeah.
And I tend to have to ask other team members, hey, make sure that I'm focused on these areas, and you slap my hand whenever it comes
Yes.
to me jumping in and not delegating enough.
It management is a skill, right? That requires
Mm.
being trained and reinforced and reminded. And unfortunately, right, there's not a lot of focus on managers. Right?
Hmm.
It's kind of a sink or swim mentality, and so it's great that you're going through that and you're learning and evolving because it's managing our direct reports to results is super
Yeah.
critical in terms of being able to scale a business. And you mentioned
Hmm.
the $1 million mark and beyond. So the stat I recently read was only 9% of businesses ever make it to a million.
Wow.
And then the commentary around that, and it's significantly harder to get to 5 million than it was to get to 1 million because what's required to scale a business is not what was required to get it to a million. So the term I saw online is called the messy middle, right? Because you mentioned that once you get to a certain, 10 or so, it becomes easier again. So that messy middle, right? The typically to get to a million, it's the hustle and grind, right? We're figuring it all out. We're wearing multiple hats. We got our hands involved in everything, right? But
Hmm.
we hit our capacity, and there's no way for the owner to be able to do everything, beyond that million-ish mark because there's just too much to be able to have your hands all involved in. So that
Yeah.
delegation becomes super important and setting the team up for success because otherwise we become the bottleneck and the business can't grow beyond us.
Right. That's so true. It's almost like at a certain point you were the skills that you had in order to get you to a million are not the skills that you need to get you
Correct.
beyond that. And
Absolutely.
then your skills change yet again, and the things that you're best at, it's kind of hard to let those go sometimes. And as a business owner, I mean, that's where in the very beginning I did everything, right? There was nobody else to delegate
Yeah.
to. Or maybe there was like one employee, to
Yeah.
delegate to.
Yeah.
And thankfully they were amazing and they were a really good fit. and they were, early on, whenever you're hiring those first few team members onto a team, I have found that you got to find a very special person
Mm,
who is open to working in more of a startup capacity. I mean, whenever you're starting a business and whether it's a tech startup or a more traditional, business services startup like what we are, we're not reinventing the wheel of our services. Now we are, I think, reinventing the way that agencies approach it. I think that we're
sure.
doing it in a very different way. I think we have a unique value proposition there,
Hmm.
but we're not reinventing the industry
Right.
necessarily. And you have to have a special person that first hire, the second hire, even the fifth hire of a small business where you're operating on such a small scale. They've got to be a special
Yeah,
person. It's a different personality type that would join a small team like that
absolutely.
compared to somebody to join a 50-person or 100-person ad agency or 1,000-person ad agency.
Yes.
That's a different skill set and a different attitude and so on. So I was very fortunate to find and to hire, some of those early employees and team members who felt more like, co-partners
Hmm.
rather
Yeah.
than rather than traditional employees.
I've heard it coined as the intrapreneur, right? The person who has that entrepreneurial spirit but has no desire to do it on their own. They want the security of being an employee, but they're willing to, to wear multiple hats and do different things. And so you mentioned, right, finding the
Wow.
right um, mindset and attitude is way more important than the skill set because we
So
do need
true.
people to wear multiple hats. Yeah.
Yeah, and we base a lot of our hiring now off of that. So for years I was making the mistake. Here's another mistake for you. For years I was outsized kind of prioritizing or emphasizing skill set over attitude.
Yeah.
And what we do now is the total
Yeah.
inverse. We
Absolutely.
are hiring for attitude over aptitude. Aptitude can be taught.
Yes.
Aptitude can be cult, can be it can be supported. You
Yes.
can grow that side of it, but the attitude, you can't change that,
Absolutely.
right? So that's something that we actually hire for outsized. We will weight a candidate for a team member position based on attitude and not
Yeah.
aptitude. It'd be nice for some basic skills to be
Yeah.
there, but
Absolutely.
beyond that, we're looking at it as attitude wins, and we'll teach everything else.
We've all had an experience where, for everyone that's listening, where we've hired somebody who was not a cultural fit, and then the pain and agony that we've had to go through. So yes, you're right, right? Like
Hmm.
let's screen for cultural fit, attitude fit, right?
Yeah.
And yes, have some basic skills and knowledge that can add value. But if we don't have that cultural fit, it is dysfunctional.
Right. And you think it's something that could be overcome. We tend to say, "Oh, we can overcome this,"
Yeah.
or you
Famous
tend to
last
like
words,
ignore
right?
it. Right. Yeah. Or something that I have found is that most often the worst outcomes whenever it comes to, hiring an employee tend to be based on maybe it's attitude, but also that they're in the wrong position,
Yeah,
that I hired them for the wrong spot.
sure.
I thought that I could mold them into
Yeah,
this type of a person
yeah,
to fit within this position. Or maybe even they said that they would, right? Or that they liked that position, or
yes,
they
yes.
thought that they liked that position. And it turned out, my goodness, it's not the right position for this person. I almost find that it's easy to as an employer, as a business owner, it's so easy for us to think that it's always someone else, right? It's always that employee side. But I tend to think it's 90% the bad situations, the bad fits are based on us
Absolutely.
and how we mishired them.
Yep,
We maybe hired them for the wrong position.
yep.
They would have been a phenomenal employee if they were put within the right position and supported within that position.
Yeah, there's a phrase that I enjoy reminding my clients about. It's the the hire slow, fire fast idea.
Oh, yes.
So
Right.
take the
Yeah.
time to
Right.
understand the cultural fit or the attitude fit, and understand. We have our strongly recommend using assessments as part of the interview process. So
Hmm.
understand, are they hardwired for the types of activities that we're going to ask them to do, and
Yeah.
if not, then that's your point of, are we
Hmm.
trying to sit them in the wrong seat, right?
Yeah.
And they're a great cultural fit, but we're wanting to hire them for a role that they really aren't,
Right.
hardwired to be able to enjoy and love and have a passion for. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It's 90% us in terms of, are we taking the right amount of time and asking the right questions and doing the right evaluation to ensure that they are a good cultural fit, and we're putting them in the right seat to set them up for success. And have we trained them right after we brought them on board, and are we holding them accountable and clearly explaining, right, what their responsibilities are and how they're going to be measured. And yeah, it's always on us.
Yeah, that's so true. And you mentioned something that reminded me, we often something I love to do is to ask kind of curveball questions in
Mm.
an interview process. And one of my favorites is if you were a podcast host, who would your guest be? Who would your number one guest be? And I used to ask what's your favorite movie, but I didn't even know why I was asking that
Sure. Yeah.
really. I just wanted to ask something that was different to
Yeah.
try and break through to the real person that I was, sitting across from. And I've been in that position where gosh, I've been on the other side of that table, just,
Yeah.
super uncomfortable and not wanting to be in an
Oh.
interview and just like counting the minutes down to where you could maybe scoot out. But I, looking back on those interviews, I just think like, gosh, those interviewers, if they asked me a question like this, it would have really broken through to me, and I would have really, it really could have gotten to somewhere that was a little bit more authentic. And so I tried my best to do that. I mean, as authentic as you can
Yeah.
get in an
Yeah.
interview,
Yeah.
it's
Of course.
still
Yeah.
it's still an interview, but I tend to ask that podcast question now,
Love
and
it.
it tells me so much about who they are and their attitudes and their personality as well. It kind of helps kind of give a good read on who they are as people.
Kevin, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you to pick three people throughout your business owner journey that you're most grateful for them being there to help with your growth. So, who are those three people and how'd they help you?
Oh wow. That's a great well, first I have to say my wife. I think, Emily, my wife, she's constantly there, but every business decision that I make, I tend to kind of run by her, even if it's after the fact, and she'll, tell me. And even like not even that I, as gosh, anybody who's married, I think can probably relate to this, is that you're not asking your spouse, your husband, your wife questions because you're going to take exactly what they say and run with it and do exactly what they recommend. But gosh, it's good to have that person, that sounding board, that person
Yes.
that you can bounce ideas off of and think about how would they envision this and hey, I did this the other day. What do you think about that?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's we get a great laugh out of it because we've designed our website in the past and I remember one in particular I showed her what the website for us was going to look like and she thought it was the worst design she's ever seen. She said, "That is so ugly. I can't believe you're going to do that." I said, "Yes, we're going to do it." We launched it. The website won an Addy, which is a American Advertising Federation award. It won Judge's Choice. It did all this stuff. I mean, it went off like gangbusters. It was a phenomenal. So I still hold that over her head. But yeah, advice, coming from my wife for sure. And then there's a few others who have been influential to me that are real people that are not, people I listen to on YouTube. Not that they're not real, but people who are in my life who've helped me. I would say, there's a business advisor named Doug Claiborne who works here in Evansville, Indiana, and he works at the SBDC here locally, the Small Business Development Center.
Yeah.
And these are phenomenal organizations that I recommend anybody who's interested in starting their own business to go to an SBDC. It's almost guaranteed that there's one probably in your city, or at least in your state, but that they're phenomenal resources. And first time that I ever looked at a cash flow spreadsheet, Doug helped me look at and
Nice.
create one,
Yeah.
and got me to think about cash flow and revenue in a different way. But he was phenomenal. He was very early on in my business career, so he was kind of the first person who helped guide me to say, "Hey, look, you don't have a finance background. You're a filmmaker, but you need to think about these things." And I say,
Yeah.
"Oh, wow, you're so right." Um, and so he really opened my eyes up to that. And we still stay in contact, and he's still around here in the Evansville area, still doing his job at the SBDC. So it's great. So, and I'll probably see him next week. And then I think somebody else who had some influence on me. There's so many who I've worked with directly, like our former director of operations here, David Jones. He was an amazing person to be on our staff. He since has left our team, but was here for 6 years and really
Mm.
helped grow the business and grow what we were doing. But there's somebody else named Frank Cowell who I've just recently met, and he gave me some really phenomenal advice that whenever it came down to problem solving for the business. And his advice was that revenue can solve for a lot of the minor problems that you're
Mm.
worried about. Because what I tend to do is hyper focus on some of the smaller problems. And Kevin O'Leary, calls this the signal to noise ratio.
Uh-huh.
And focusing on the noise rather than the signal. And
Sure.
he described Steve Jobs as having a really high signal to noise ratio, that his ratio was like, he basically an 80/20. His signal, he was able to focus on 80% of the
Mm.
time and then filter out the rest, and the
Yeah.
noise made up maybe 20%.
Yeah.
He also says that Elon Musk is the only person that he knows of who has a higher signal to noise ratio, which is like 100%, like 100% signal, no noise at all. And my noise is not like distractions, but my noise is really more of the minor problems within the business
Sure.
that tend to take up more attention. It's the squeaky wheel problem
Sure.
rather than focusing on just overall growth and revenue. And so Frank Cowell helped advise me in that way and said, look, focus on revenue. Revenue will solve a lot of these minor
Mm.
problems, and they'll come out in the wash, but grow the sales, grow the top line revenue of your business. And that's what I've been trying to do ever since.
Love it. Kevin, the path to building a successful business has a lot to do with our mindset as well as our learning along the way. So what's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
Oh, wow. I mean, um, I think that one of the things that comes to mind that we haven't talked about so far is the focus on what being a leader means, right? Because I think back on my filmmaking days often, or anytime I'm on set. I haven't been on set in a while, but I think back on those times when I was directing a scene and working with an actor, and being on set actually prepared me really well for leading a team in
Mm.
an
Yeah.
ad agency kind of world, because it taught me that, and it's so much easier said than done, but to give the authentic response and be as truthful as possible.
Mhm.
And it's easy to say that, but then when you're in a situation,
Yeah.
it tends to be easier to maybe fib a little bit and like not be as honest and not be as truthful
Yeah.
to avoid the awkwardness. And I think that's just human nature, is that we tend to try and avoid awkward situations.
Yeah.
But being on set helped teach me that, because there was one scene where I was directing an actor who had a lot of stage experience. And this was my first film that I had ever written, directed. And she was in a kitchen, and the scene was she needed to pick up a telephone. And We did a take and it wasn't quite right. We did 5 takes, it wasn't quite right. 10 takes, still not quite right. 15 take. I mean, these are a lot of takes, Tim, for an
Yeah.
indie film. For a film that doesn't have a budget, everybody's volunteering.
Yeah.
We got up to upwards of 25, 28 takes. The actor in front of everybody, in front of a whole crew, turns to me and says, "What do you want me to do?"
Mm.
And I was shocked and I said, "Wow, you're so right. Do this." And she said, "Thank you." And it went great after that. And it made me realize that that directing and being upfront and being honest. Now, I wouldn't suggest that you should do that out of the gate because overly directing, whether it's on set or in a workplace environment, out of the gate might not be great because you want to see what others are going to bring to it,
Sure.
right? But once they bring something to it and then you realize that's not quite right,
Yes.
and you're not going to give up because you're very stubborn, because you're a business owner, because we all are, and you know that you're not going to stop until 35 takes later, 40 takes later, until they finally stumble upon it, to give that honest feedback and that honest constructive criticism right out of the gate. And you could do it in a nice way. But I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, from the filmmaking days all the way to business and being a leader for the team, is that I try my best to give the honest, direct feedback as soon as possible. Not too early because I want them to bring their expertise and their knowledge and their opinion to the table, but then after that,
Yeah.
as quickly as possible.
What I love about that is it's so much easier for an employee to hit it out of the park if they actually know what the expectations are, right?
Right.
And have a little bit of a guardrail in terms of what they can and can't do. So, it's easier for them to know how to be excellent.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Setting expectations, it's so important. It's important for new hires, whenever they join a team, to expect, is this as busy as what it's always going to be? Or
Mhm.
is this light work because I'm getting onboarded right now? So that's something that we've tried our best to do, is make sure that the team, especially new team members, know exactly what to be expected. Like, this is light because you're being onboarded.
Yes.
You will be managing X amount of clients, or you will be doing X amount of work.
Yes.
Because I've seen it happen so many times where they kind of get used to that level
Yes,
and
right?
they think that the onboarding level, and it's just a lack of us setting the expectations correctly. It all comes back to that, and communication. Gosh, communication is
For sure.
is, is critical. Yeah, and I've learned. I think I've learned. We can always get better. I can always be better, but I think I've learned a lot on communication as well. There's a great quote. I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit. There's a great quote, that good communication is not how well you say something, but how well you're understood.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I just
Yes.
I try my best to practice that. My natural tendency is not to do that.
Yes.
My natural tendency is to use fluffy language that does not get understood as well. And so I tend to have to fight against that and use more direct language.
I
But
love it. Hey, another version of that quote, our founder says that communication is the response you get.
wow. Wow, I love that. I
Yeah.
love
So,
that.
yeah, if we don't like the
Yeah.
response, there's probably something that we need to tweak in our communication. So,
Yeah, that's a simpler way to say. I like that. Yeah, that's good. Good communication.
Kevin, as you think about the next year, what's an area that either you're currently stuck in or you need to focus on to achieve your long-term goals?
Yeah, at the beginning of this year, we went from, being a full service ad agency, offering everything from, social, digital services, out of home billboards, gosh, everything, website, brand, and video production on a high level of video production shoots that were, 5 people, 6 people shoots, things like that, video projects that that sometimes were as long as 16-minute video project. I mean, these are short films essentially,
Yeah.
pretty heavy lifts to being a digital ad agency. Whenever we rebranded back in January, we stripped out video
Okay.
as a service line, which is interesting because it's my background, it's
Yeah.
my passion, it's what got me into what I'm doing now. But it was clear that it was the most vulnerable service line that we offered. So I stripped that out of our service offering. We went all in on the things that were scalable, that we're the best at, which are digital, social, websites, and brand development. And so we still do some of those things I mentioned before, like billboards and things like that, but they always tie back to a digital campaign. They
Okay.
always tie back to a digital source for us. So I think in the future, like what the next year looks like for us is hyper focusing on those key areas.
Sure.
Something else that we've learned, and we've literally are just now learning it, is that whenever it comes to acquiring new clients for us, there's certain service lines and things that we do that do not get those clients in through the door.
Right.
So advertising logo design or advertising photography, which is something that we still do, does not get new clients in through the door for us. We're realizing that those are things that clients tend to realize are broken after they reach
Yeah.
out to us.
Right.
It's not something that they realize is broken before their website. They realize their website is broken almost immediately. They
Mm,
realize their website's not working. And then we get in there and we start working with them and realize, oh wow, it's not just your website, it's actually your brand seems to be a little inconsistent, or your logo might need to be updated,
sure.
or the fact that you don't have photography on your site. There's all these other components. And that's that holistic approach that I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, but that these are the service lines that get us new clients in through the door. And a broken website is almost, at the top of that list. And then social and digital advertising needs are a close second for us.
Yeah.
So whenever it comes to what we're doing moving forward and over the next year, it's hyper focusing on those
Yeah.
key areas
Yeah.
and making sure that we're targeting new prospective clients for the things that they know are broken. And then we can expand out from there
Sure.
and offer those other service lines that we provide.
I love it. Kevin, it sounds like you've been blessed with some incredible people in your business journey. So if they were all here on the show today, what would you want to say to them?
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for taking a chance to spend time and to give advice to somebody who uh who from the outside, probably didn't have a lot to offer. A skateboarder who was into film, who had zero business pedigree, who had zero experience in the business world at all. I think that's what's so amazing is that whenever you find people in business, I think it could be other business owners, it could be people. You said something earlier, it wasn't entrepreneur, but it was intrapreneur.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've never heard that before, but it's like finding those people they might not be entrepreneurs themselves, but they're entrepreneurs, but they have those skill sets. But it's amazing to find so many people who are just willing to have a coffee with you. It's amazing what it's I feel blessed that I was able to speak to so many people and still come in contact with people that can give good advice. And I've tried to pay that forward the best that I can. Anytime that somebody reaches out for a cup of coffee, I try my best, even if it's a quick 15-minute
Yeah.
chat or a 30-minute chat, to try my best to connect with them, grab coffee, and to share my experience and what I've gone through and some of the challenges that I've overcome. So I try my best to pay it forward, but time is very valuable.
Indeed.
And so it's amazing and I feel very fortunate that those people early on in my career gave me the advice that I was looking for.
Kevin, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's great what you do. Love the podcast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show. Please help spread this movement by liking and subscribing to our show and following us on Facebook and LinkedIn. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Please pay it forward and be sure to tune in next time to the Self-Made is a Myth podcast.